Okay. Hey everyone, my name is Alvin Gonzalez. Welcome to the August 5th, 2024 Bicycle Advisory Committee for Arlington County. Happy to have Cynthia Palmer, the chair of the committee, to lead the meeting, and I'll hand off to her.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Cynthia Palmer, and since our first speaker has only limited time, we'll do introductions, but we'll just keep them real quick. So if you could say your name and then maybe what part of Arlington you live in. So I'll start. My name is Cynthia, and I represent East Falls Church area. And I'll just go down the list as I see it. So we have Anahita Mazidi. I hope I'm not butchering the pronunciation.
No, it's fine. Thank you. I'm Anna, and I'm a design engineer working with Arlington County Vision Zero program.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then we have Brian.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Shelton. I'm an active transportation planner in transportation planning and capital projects.
Welcome. And then Christine.
Hi, I'm Christine Baker. I'm the Vision Zero program manager. Excited to be here.
Hey. And then Demetra.
Hi, it's just checking that I had my microphone on. Demetra McBride, I'm the Bureau Chief of the Office of Sustainability and Environmental Management for Arlington County.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for coming. And then Ed.
You're on mute.
Muted.
Can you hear me now? Ed Blanton, Arlington.
Wonderful. And then Elwin.
Hey everyone, my name is Alvin Gonzalez. I'm a transportation planner with DES.
And then Eric Goodman.
Hi, I'm Eric Goodman. I live in the Bluemont neighborhood, and I just want to say it's good to see Ed Blanton. I have not seen him in maybe half a decade, so great to see you here.
Hi, Eric. Good to see you, buddy.
Mike Hanna.
Mike Hanna, Arlington Heights.
Hi, Mike. Laura Castro.
Hi, good evening. I'm a Vision Zero planner with Arlington County.
Excellent. Thanks for coming. And then Andrew.
Hey, Andrew Martin, also Arlington Heights.
And Mary.
I'm Mary DeLau. I'm with Bike Arlington, and I live in Bluemont.
Excellent. And Noreen.
Hi, I'm Noreen Hannigan. I live in Dominion Hills.
And Pam.
Hi, Pam Van Hine, Aurora Highlands, and I'm with the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I'm just visiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Randy.
Randy Swart, I live in Barcroft.
Aaron.
Hi, Aaron Schutz. I live in Line Park and work for Arlington Schools.
Steve.
Hi, my name is Steve Offit. I live near Courthouse.
All right. I think we got everyone. Did I miss anyone? If so, like now's the time. Speak up. All right. I think
someone with me is in the waiting room, but maybe there's no. Is there anyone in the waiting room? Or is she in the wrong place? She's messaging me.
Uh-oh. I'm not seeing her in the...
All right, so I'll tell her to come on over, but go ahead. Just, we can keep moving and I'll try and help her get where she needs to be.
Okay, thank you. So we are delighted to have Christine Sherman Baker the Vision Zero program manager from DES here. And I know that Christine has only very limited time, so I won't say more, but thank you so much for squeezing us in.
Thanks. No, I think we kind of have like a hard stop at 7:45, but I know we have us earlier in the agenda, so we'll try to respect that time. So anyway, you saw in the introductions, we have the Vision Zero team, all the full-time employees on the team here. I'm joined by Laura Castro and Anna Mazzidi. So I'll get this presentation rolling, but it's a long presentation. So I'm going to hit on the high points and I'm going to send you a copy of it so you have all the links in it, because I'm sure you'll have questions on things or want to look in more detail. So we'll cover progress and reporting, engineering focus, engagement and education, and then talk about what's coming up in the next year. So I think the 2023 recap is starting to be old news, but if you haven't seen the virtual open house story map, it's a really great way to see all the stuff we worked on over the last year. And we also just released the 2023 annual crash report. So those are all up on the website. You can see in 2023, we had a pretty bad year. It was higher than the rolling average over the past 10 years, you can see. A lot of that, I'll talk about the factors in just a second. But we also had lots going on. So you can see on the right hand of the screen, we were delivering projects, we were focused on engagement, we were focused on reviews, we were focused on schools. So lots of really good stuff coming out of the year as well. But when you dig into that data, we did see alcohol and speed as really big factors in our severe and fatal crashes. 5 out of our 6 fatal crashes involved alcohol. Speed, you can see the trend has gone up since COVID. And if you really dig into the collision type, we had a big increase in fixed object off-road crashes. And there was a combination of that with the alcohol and the speed, sometimes all factors combined. But it was up 4%, which is significant because we don't usually see big changes in the variation in collision type. We also saw a big increase in crashes at night. All the fatal crashes that happened in Arlington happened between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m. in 2023. And you see a big spike in the unbelted severe crashes. It kind of goes back up to where it was before COVID a few years earlier, but you see some downward progress and then back up. So again, these are areas where we are going to be focusing. If you want to dig into data more, we have 2 dashboards now, trying to work on that transparency and accountability goal we had in the action plan. The new program dashboard, it's the first thing you see on the website. It's a green link. It shows you all of the, it shows you crash data, infrastructure data. So if you want to see where there's LPIs or stop signs, all these different tools. We have the initiatives all shown on this tab, our speed limit reviews, as well as outreach. And then the new data dashboard we have allows you to do a little bit more in-depth analysis with the crash data itself. So this one replaced the old crash data dashboard. And there's a new user guide too, if you get confused at all while you're working on it. And then in terms of progress reporting, we did go to the Transportation Commission in May and did a presentation kind of similar to this. And we got some really great feedback. They wanted to see investment in speed management, things like roundabouts, speed humps, more speed reduction, which is all in line with where we're going, more proactive and systemic deployment of safety tools and projects, faster action, particularly on the engineering side, looking into technology, coordination across the repaving and maintenance efforts to try to, combine and leverage these opportunities where we already have funding coming in to add some safety improvements, do some safe driver training, better policies to support safety. We also talked about excluding the interstates in our crash totals because we don't have much say in what happens on those roads. So that actually is something you can do on the data dashboard. You can exclude interstate crashes, and we're going to start doing that in some of the reporting. As well as really diving into anti-drunk driving. So looking at engineering improvements, one of the big things we do is critical crash response. Every quarter, we go over any critical or fatal crash that happened and identify immediate action from that. We also we actively track all bike and ped crashes so we can understand if there's any emerging patterns, places we're seeing the same thing, or just preventable situations. And now I'm going to pass it to Anna, who can talk for a minute about the hotspot program that she leads.
Thank you, Christine. So for hotspot program, we take a look at all crash data within the county every 2 years. We look at all the details, all the conditions of the crashes. We do sometimes even observe field behavior. And based on all the information we can collect, we propose improvement that can increase the safety at these locations. Through the 2022 hotspot program, county installed 24 improvements, have 18 improvements in progress, and 27 other improvements in the works or recently completed as part of a pre-existing project. For 2024 hotspot, reviews are underway, and all new hotspots will be reviewed by the end of this year. I'll pass it to you again, Christine.
Thanks. And we're actually going to go right to Laura, who's going to talk about the Hydrate network and the audits we do.
Yeah, so hi everyone. So I'm in charge of planning and getting our various teams together for the high injury network safety audits. So we work with our colleagues on different teams, such as like the design team engineers or transit team, signals team, parking team, to get their input and expertise. And sometimes these groups also have projects coming along the corridor, so it's a great way to have everyone provide input before project starts and hopefully make them, safer. And I actually recently, once we conduct our safety audits, we summarize our findings and publish them on our Vision Zero website. And we try to come up with solutions to improve safety on these corridors and have quick turnarounds. I recently published a safety audit that we had on Monroe, and we recently completed one on Wilson Boulevard. And for more information, you can find that on our Vision Zero website.
Awesome. And shout out to Elwin and Brian, who are always on our walks helping.
Yeah.
Great team.
And then for quick build projects, so these are transportation projects that just take a shorter time than, I guess, traditional transportation projects. And we identify these projects collaboratively. Some of these actually do come out of our high injury network safety audits as we walk along the corridors, or even our hotspots programs. And we've worked with schools and work with stakeholders in order to provide these quick build projects. And you can find the quick build projects, if you're interested in seeing more, on our Vision Zero, one of our Vision Zero dashboard. Yeah.
Oh, wait. Oh.
Thanks, Laura. And you can see, I think, Second Road and Garfield South, the image right there was from a critical crash response. So these projects get identified through all different ways. And school zone retrofits. We completed retrofitting all of our school zones to meet our new school zone guidelines earlier this year, which was really exciting to get all that infrastructure set up. That includes the slow zones that are permanently 20 mile per hour all day, every day, as well as making sure all of our beacons were in the right place. And now we're going to double down on all that by adding tactical speed humps in the school slow zones and speed cameras in the beacon zones, which you will get an update on that in a couple weeks. In terms of equity progress, we are working towards the action set forth in the transportation safety equity analysis. We're tracking how many projects we're delivering, the community requests we're getting, and just using equity emphasis areas to help elevate and prioritize projects. So we'll be reporting more on that as we go on. But it's been helpful to really elevate areas that may have been underserved or had more crashes in the past. Our tactical speed hump safety pilot went really well the first round. We got really great public community feedback, and we got great feedback or great speed data results. You can see major reductions in speed on these corridors. So we are doing another round right now. South Dinwiddie, South Irving, and 22nd Street South are all getting speed humps over the next couple weeks before school starts. And then we'll be assessing more zones over the next several months to keep this kind of coming and continue to expand the speed hump program, because we're seeing results and it's really helpful to reduce speeds around schools. Anna, I'll pass it back to you real quick to talk about the the other safety pilots we have going on?
Sure, Christine. So we do have this temporary bus platform at South Glebe Road and South Old Glebe Road. To do so, we remove the right turn lane and install a tactical bus platform. This will shorten the crosswalk by 1 lane. And additionally, we're closing the median there to prevent any conflicting movement there and increasing this. All of this project is to improve the safety of the pedestrian crossing here. The other safety pilot is a center line hardening. We have already installed the bollards along the center line at 5 locations. This will slow the vehicle making the turn and provide better visual for them while they're turning to see the pedestrian there. And these are some of the list of locations that so far they have been installed. Back to you, Christine.
Thanks. And yeah, we've done robust before after data collection at these locations. So we'll be reporting out on that and doing public engagement in September. And then Anna's already got a long list of potential locations that we've identified to do this at in more spots throughout the county, depending on kind of how that before after data and the public engagement goes. For education and engagement, we created an official public engagement plan this year to help outline all the stuff we're doing. We have our critical crash mitigation campaign. Every month we use themes that have come up during the critical crash review meetings, and we send them out through various media. We have them translated in lots of languages, and we do pop-up events to help spread that message. And for example, the photo you see, we talked about the dark conditions, and we went to AFAC and gave away beanies with a reflective element on them so people could have that as a way to be more visible in the winter months. We've also done in-street tool campaigns. You may have seen these around to tell people about LPIs, curb mods, RFBs, bike boxes. We're hoping to do this a little bit more because it's helped to educate people. We've gotten lots of hits on the website from these things. So we are finding it very effective to meet people where they are. And then also we've been making sure that when we are engaging with people, for example, for the annual repave efforts or our pilot projects, we have something out in the street so people can see the description of what's happening. They have a QR code they can go to learn more. And that way it's not as kind of enigmatic. When you see something pop up on your street, you're able to understand kind of where it came from and why it's there. We also did our annual safety feedback engagement in the spring. We got over 800 online responses, over 600 in-person interactions. We tried to be everywhere, including like sidewalk stickers, lawn signs, and we got lots of interactions. So that really helps us to understand how we're doing and get that feedback from the community. One of the things that comes out of that is this clickable map. We have a rolling 3-year set of data that comes from the annual safety engagement. We take everything we get from the pop-ups too, which are focused in equity areas, and put them into this map. And this is something we reference when we're doing our high injury network audits, when we're doing hotspot reviews or other safety reviews. This is a great way to go and see, well, what did the community have to say about this, and incorporate it as a qualitative data source into our assessment. So moving forward for 2024, what we've been focused on are getting all the school slow zones implemented. We are focused on getting that speed safety camera launch before school starts. So you'll see a press release coming out next week about that. You may have also seen a recent press release about the red light safety camera expansion. So we had 4 new locations just come online for warnings, and we have 2 more coming this year. And Laura just pulled a bunch of data that we're helping share with police so we can continue to grow that list and build out some of these red light intersections that were permitted by law. We're also really diving into before-after analysis because we've been doing Vision Zero for a few years now. So we can go back, look at past high injury network audits, past hotspots, past quick builds, and see the before-after crash rates. And that's going to be starting to report in our mid-year reports this year. So we're going to start to really dig into that information, share it with you so you can see what's working, what's not, and what we're doing to fix the things that aren't working the way we wanted them to. We're also trying to think outside the box, think about speed management, especially on arterials, because speed cameras are only applicable in school zones. So how do we, address speed in other locations? We're focusing on that. We're also working on a regional alcohol awareness and enforcement, or not enforcement, but alcohol awareness campaign. We have recommendations coming from a third party, not just for us, but for the entire region on how we can help curb drunk driving. And we're also focusing in on safety analysis within the site plan multimodal transportation analysis. I think also not on this list is focusing in on safety in the MOT, which you guys are going to have a presentation on later on this year. And I think we'll be at the same meeting to talk about how we're refreshing our multimodal safety engineering toolbox, because we released that 2 years ago. And so they've updated the MUTCD, which is the manual uniform traffic control device. And that is a way that a tool that guides the work we do. So when that gets updated, we also want to update our toolbox to make sure it matches. So we'll be doing that refresh, and I think we'll be coming to talk to you in the PAC when that happens. So looking out a little bit broader, we're going to be going into our action plan update sometime in the middle of next year, which will be a nice time to revisit everything we've been doing, look at those before after studies, and start to refocus our plan to get to 2030. So we'll be doing community engagement and reaching out to different groups like you as we start to plan that action plan update. And so with that, we are happy to talk, have questions, answer questions, or dig further into anything we've already talked about.
Thank you so very much. That was fascinating, disturbing. I have questions, but I'm sure others do too. So I won't be a pig. Does anyone want to go first? Aaron.
Sure, I don't mind starting. First of all, a ton of awesome stuff. I'm super excited to be walking through intersections now and biking through intersections. It's hard to get to zero, but do you have evidence that the things that you're doing that I'm pretty excited about are making a difference? When the numbers aren't dropping, would they have been higher? Would they have been much higher? Do people feel safer and so they're out on the streets more now? Is micro-mobility making it better or worse and muddying the waters?
That's a great question. I think when we look at things like pilots, it helps to see it on a micro scale, where for the centerline hardening, for example, we're looking at the turn speeds of the vehicles and we're looking at the yield rates. And we haven't gotten the data yet, so I don't want to get too excited, but like I think we're going to see a really big difference just based on the observations we've seen. So, for RFBs, we've done yield rate studies to know that the yield rates have increased like up to 70% by having an RFB at an intersection. So when we look down at that micro level, we can see these big changes, and it might not reflect in the crash data, but like I said, there was so much alcohol last year. There was a lot of like kind of speeding on interstates, and it's hard for us to communicate some of these other benefits when you've got other things happening. I do think this year is looking better. I want to knock on wood when I say that, but what we have seen, we had our critical crash meeting today, and I mean, there were some things that just are really outlandish. You can't anticipate, like a road rage incident where somebody gets hit on purpose, or when somebody has a medical emergency behind a vehicle. Like those things all kind of go into the crash data as well. So luckily we are seeing less of the preventable things, and unfortunately there still are things that are just outside of our hands. So we're going to keep working on getting that data to tell the story.
Anecdotal follow-up. I read ARL now, and used to be there are a lot of cars flipping in Arlington. That seems to have gone down. Is that a lack of reporting on cars flipping over, or are cars flipping over less often now because of all of your efforts?
I think usually we do know when a car flips because the police typically end up reporting to those ones. So
is that going down?
I hope that's a good trend. Yeah.
All right. I just want to make sure it's not underreported because I want to hide that data.
I know a car flipped in front of my daughter just a couple weeks ago in Boston when she was working, and she looked out the window from her job. So they still are flipping, unfortunately, in Arlington.
Yeah, that was the first one for a long time, though.
Was it? Okay.
The first one reported on ARL now, anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Steve, you're up.
Yeah. So, is your team in a position to like ask for significant additional funding, so let's say in 2 years, the data still doesn't show a rapid enough decrease to come close to meeting the target, do you have comfort that the county is willing to double or triple or quadruple or 10 times the investment so that we can get there? Or are they just going to continue to go along on the same funding path regardless?
I think they have been open to giving funding to this program. We have seen an increase. I don't know how much it was, but I know we asked for money and we got it in a bad budget year. So I think there is faith in this, and I think a lot of what needs to be done, unfortunately, like ends up kind of leading into like bigger projects, like capital projects. So I think it is a balance between giving funding to like a Vision Zero, like on the ground tactical stuff, but also making sure that these bigger projects, like where we need big sidewalk improvements, we need total intersection changes, that like I want to make sure that's getting funded too, because that's the only way we're going to be able to deliver some projects or improvements at the really tough spots.
Thank you. Mike Hanna is next.
Yeah, just real quick, we meet monthly as an advisory board to county staff and set us the PED. That's what we're appointed for. And I'm just wondering if you're looking, what advice you need from us? It feels like we're a great repository. We are out in the streets every day seeing these things, but I don't remember you guys coming to us and asking specifically for advice. It's great to be able to comment on the stuff you're doing, but is there any advice you'd be looking for as a pedestrian community, pedestrian and cycling community in the work you're doing?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the big things coming up is the, like I said, the refresh of the multimodal engineering toolbox. And I think what we like as we're revisiting that, as we're thinking about tools, especially as we're thinking about pilots too, it's great to know what you guys have experienced. Like, what do you like? What have you seen in Arlington that you're like, we need more of this? Or like, what do you see in Arlington where you're thinking, maybe this wasn't the best decision? Or things you've seen in other places where it feels like it could be an appropriate kind of comparison or match to do something similar in Arlington. So hearing about kind of what you're living as you're like biking around or as you're walking around, that's the kind of stuff that we would love to know. And that's, I think, what we're going to try to talk about next time we come and focus in on that, kind of giving you almost the homework of like, hey, can you really take notice of this and try to bring us that feedback so we can incorporate it into the planning. We let the data drive a lot of what spots we look at. That's how the program is supposed to be based, especially focusing in those severe and fatal crashes. So I know it's hard to be like, oh, let us know of any spots, because we're already trying to identify the spots every day, all day. But I think just knowing about your experiences and hearing what we can do to help expand on our program is great. And then I also think you guys do an amazing job in the advocacy space, because we don't always get a big say when other departments or when developers are coming in to make improvements or change our right of way. So having your voice be there as a collective voice for advocating for safety is really important, because we're doing it too. But it's kind of the more you hear it in the various places you hear it, help to make that change that we see deliver the big projects and the changes when big projects are kind of coming down the pipeline.
Thank you. And now we have Eric Goodman.
Yeah, just to follow up of what we can share in terms of information. If we see something, should we report it in the service portal, or what is the best way we should get that information to you?
Yes, if you see a safety issue, a concern, if something's broken, always go to report a problem, because that way it gets assigned immediately to an engineer. You get a tracking number. There's no chance for somebody losing it. I think that's great. If there's other things that are more nuanced, or it's kind of like feedback on something specific, that's when you could always email somebody. But if you're looking for like a pointed problem on the road, that should go to report a problem first.
Thank you. And Andrew.
Hey, so I haven't been over to Irving to go see those new speed bumps that I saw just got put in. But something that came up on a previous one of these meetings was how like cyclists, myself included, like the fire truck channels in those speed bumps, and it's not guaranteed that those are always there. So that's just a suggestion that when possible, like include those channels in the speed bumps.
Thank you. Yeah, that is something we heard when we did the community feedback. I think we're trying tactical one more round, and we might try to start building asphalt soon. So I don't know, it's still under discussion, but we did get that feedback, and I think we're going to try to figure out a more lasting program to make sure that the cyclists have a path. But thank you for saying that. That's helpful.
Thank you. I see Mike's hand is up. Did you have another question, Mike?
No, I left it up by accident, but
No worries.
since I'm on just real quickly, report a problem really doesn't work, but we don't need to go down that rabbit hole tonight.
This is true.
Okay. Yeah, I know there are issues, and I'm happy to take that feedback too and try to work with it, because I've seen the nuances. Like in some cases it works great, and in others you might get led nowhere. So I'm happy to help with that.
Thank you. I do have more questions.
Sure.
So one question is with regard to, like, when you were giving us the data, and it's pretty scary. I mean, just the number of serious crashes and fatalities. Does Falls Church City experience the same trends with their slower speed limits and higher enforcement? Do you happen to know, like, is it working what they're doing? And I don't know if we're allowed, even since we're a county and they're like a city, I don't know if we're allowed to do the same thing.
That's a great question. I don't know specifically for Falls Church, so I'll have to look into that. Anna, you used to work at Falls Church too, so maybe you know people. But I do know regionally it's been a big issue. Montgomery County has had a horrible time. I think DC's had a pretty bad time. So that's why, as a region, we applied for this regional roadway safety program grant. And we had a consultant analyze alcohol-specific crash data throughout the region to see if there were any trends. And then also kind of come up with recommendations on like ways to start dealing with that. So that was kind of on the alcohol side, what things look like. I don't know for speed though. So we'll have to talk to Falls Church and see what experience they've had in other jurisdictions too, because we're always learning. That's like, we have monthly calls with all the jurisdictions that are Vision Zero, and it's a great way to just kind of see what other people are up to and get it. Luckily, a lot of it's kind of similar too, so we're always sharing and borrowing ideas.
Another question is, I probably need to study the data, but I could just ask you. So some of our roads are National Park Service, some of them are VDOT. Like, are you noticing trends in depending on whose road it is? And are you all responsible for the safety, like on a VDOT road? I mean, oftentimes we make requests and we're told, well, actually that's VDOT, and like that's harder for Arlington to intervene. So how is that from your perspective with the different like control over different roads?
Yeah, we don't get much involved in NPS or MWA roads because it's very, very challenging to navigate those. We have coordinated with NPS, but in terms of like their roads, it's usually pretty limited involvement. For VDOT, they own Glebe Road, they own Langston Boulevard, parts of Washington Boulevard, Old Dominion. So like those are big roads in Arlington, right? And I think they do have fairly worse trends than the Arlington owned roads. So a lot of that is because we don't get to go out and put whatever we want on it whenever we need to. Whenever we want to install something on a VDOT road, we have to go through a permitting process. We often have meetings with them. Every time there's a comment, it's a 45-day reset period. So, it can just take a really long time to get anything built on a VDOT road, unfortunately. We have had different meetings with VDOT. We're trying to figure out ways to help expedite this and kind of get them to think a little bit more outside of the box and progressive. I understand they're a very big agency. They have so much to really manage. So we try to really help them out. But it does, the timelines just get really, really challenging on those. So it's something we're working on, and I think we're making progress on. So.
And does that show up in your data?
We haven't done a specific poll, but I imagine it would. I think we probably want to do something internally, but again, we want to, maintain a good relationship as well.
Yeah. Okay. And another question. So, based on the 2020 census, Arlington could have 23 intersections covered by red light cameras. And I'm wondering sort of how many intersections we have right now that have the red light cameras, and are we going to get to the full number, and how is that prioritized, and which intersections and so on?
Yeah, I think so. We have 15. Once the last two get installed, we'll have 15. We ended up decommissioning 2. One, because it was getting no more violations. It essentially had done its job. So we decommissioned that one. We're going to replace it with a different location that does have a crash pattern. And another one was under construction on Columbia Pike, and we couldn't operate it, so it didn't make sense to keep up for another couple of years. So anyway, those locations will get replaced, and then I think we'll have more. This is an area where I think the county board has been great at channeling funding where we want it, especially for the speed cameras, to try to get that off the ground. So I'm hopeful that we'll get another batch, get closer to 20 very soon. I'm not sure what the exact number will look like, but as I mentioned, Laura did a nice deep dive into all the red light running crashes. We're going to package that up, send it to ACPD, and then they work with their vendor to get trial cameras up. They actually monitor the sites for long periods, and then can help report back exactly what the violations look like and identify the best candidates. So we're excited to keep that growing because it's a really powerful tool.
Great. And I will ask one more question because I don't see more hands to dominate this. Sorry. So crossing Shirlington Road has been a priority for the BAC and the PAC in our letters to Mr. Schwartz and so on. We find, this is a really important crossing because we have the Arlington Loop, because we have that gorgeous playground. I want to go play in it. And so many people are crossing there, and a lot of us have had some quite difficult or threatening experiences. There's you have the flashing lights, but there's 2 lanes, and the drivers in one lane might stop, and then the others just zip through, and it's a troubling intersection. What can Vision Zero do in the short and intermediate term to help us cross Shirlington Road more comfortably?
So I know that this was a hotspot, and Anna reviewed it and had a plan to add some bollards, kind of tightening up the intersection. But then when we went to install things, there was the project happening, and they added the center RFB and built the wider median. And I know they're shifting RFB locations, adding more visual cues, trimming the trees, adding the new bridge. And I think, you know, the lighting was improved. So I know there was this big project to kind of help things in the intermediate. And then we have kind of a backup plan of like more to do, but I think we're going to be monitoring it for now to see how the new conditions are working. And then I know our capital projects team is also looking at long-term solutions too. So I'm curious, what has your experience been with the newer design, or has it just been kind of under construction? And
Well, my experience is that there's no change, and of course the new bridge is irrelevant because that doesn't go across the road.
Yeah.
That's a separate. I mean, that just keeps people from like having a narrow walk to cross, you know, to go over the creek. So you know, I think there's a really simple, very simple thing you could do in the short run is to, you know, make the right turning traffic off the ramp something to make them go slow as they approach that intersection. If it were a raised intersection, at the very least, they'd be slowing down to try and go over the intersection, or, you know, I don't know, rumble strips. I mean, I think there's a couple of things that would at least get them alert, because when some of the cars that turn right, particularly if they're turning right on green, they're traveling at a high rate of speed already, and they're just turning onto Shirlington Road at that rate of speed, and then the intersection is right there. So, so something to make
so we're still
that
seeing similar issues.
Is really forced to slow down before the intersection.
We actually had a long conversation about rumble strips earlier today, so it's very relevant.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying.
No,
that's the solution. I'm just saying that's like getting the northbound traffic to be significantly slowed prior to the intersection would be part of the solution. And then of course the other part, that's the really scary part, is what Cynthia brought up, and that is that the one car is slowing down for you, and the car next to them, you know, then illegally speeds through. And you know, those of us who use it all the time know that's going to happen, but your family that's walking their stroller across doesn't. And so, you know, yeah, someone's going to get hurt or killed, just like on Little Falls Parkway up in Bethesda, you know, a few years ago, for the exact same design problem. So.
Okay.
Pam.
Yeah, I'll ditto what they've been saying, that it is just as scary for pedestrians, for cyclists. And I like some of Steve's suggestions. It's the problem, you know, you have 4 lanes of traffic, and there's a really good chance at least one of them will not stop. They don't see you, and you can't really see them until it's too late. One suggestion, I don't know if you can fix it. The big buttons are on the wrong side, on both sides. I don't know why. They're on the left side.
With the new design?
I don't think they've changed the big buttons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's so as a pedestrian, I have to cross the left side of the path to hit the button to cross on either side. And you know, I'm running into bikes, I'm running into other pedestrians, and you know, it's hard to do that and also focus on actually trying to cross the street. So whatever you can do would be great. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, we'll look around at potential additions and talk to the project team to see what makes sense. So thank you for the feedback.
The other issue there, just real quick, is a lot of times traffic backs up because of the traffic lights, and so the traffic stops, and then you try to cross, and you're weaving your way through parked, you know, stopped vehicles that might start at any moment, right? And so it could be that a raised crosswalk might help that situation some. It's not going to solve it, but at least it'll make people aware that, oh wait, I'm sitting up on something, or I'm about to drive up on something that's different. So I need to look out for what's going on even when the light turns green. So just another thought.
Thanks. Yeah.
And I know that you mentioned that there's like certain rules, like some cameras can only be used near schools. Does that apply to next to playgrounds as well, or no?
Unfortunately, no. State code says only in school zones or work zones, and we have focused our effort on the school zones because they are more static than a work zone, and has allowed us to kind of plan the program out.
And do you happen to know if like there's ever been anyone who's done any enforcement there whatsoever? Because I mean, you go down there and drivers stop all the time, like right on top of the crosswalk, and they sit there. And it would be easy for a police officer to just go over and say, "Here you go, nice ticket for you, nice ticket for you, blocking the crosswalk." I mean, they could make a good living, go eat lunch on that, and I mean, if you did that, I don't know, just once or a couple of times, it might get, just, I mean, I don't know, but I have the sense that no one has ever enforced anything there ever.
I can bring that up at our next meeting with police and see if it's something they can do. It's a good idea. I do have to leave, so I'm sorry. I can take one last question. Jillian, I see you.
Hi, thanks, Christine. Thanks for being here. It just, when you say, when you talk to police, I know often when we talk to police about enforcement, they say, oh, they're understaffed, they can't, they don't have the people to do this. I have seen police a lot lately enforcing the speed limit on the highways, like on 27, before you get into Lyon Park. I've seen them on the ramps to 66, and more lately than before. So, I saw an Arlington police officer as you get on to Glebe to go down to Chain Branch Road. Thought that was interesting. So I think they do have more bandwidth to actually do traffic enforcement, which is awesome. But they seem to be doing traffic enforcement in exactly those places where there's nobody walking or biking, which seems to be not the best prioritization.
Yes. And I think it's kind of a new development where you're right, like we haven't had the capacity to be doing details in a long time. And so we haven't had a priority list, but this actually came up today when we were having a speed reduction strategization meeting, but we were talking about, getting a list of roads that have like the higher problems and then having that on their cycle. So it's not like, because I know one of the problems they run into is the space to do enforcement. Like you have to have the space for the vehicle, and like to do it safely and visibly, they have to have a certain like criteria to meet. So I know some places are better than others to do enforcement. For example, like Carlin Springs has been tough. But that is our priority now, is like getting a list to them saying, hey, can you circulate these? Like get people out as best you can to help address the actual problem locations. So we're going to be working on that, and that is a very astute observation because I know there hasn't been a lot of enforcement, in the past several years. So it's great to know that we're at a better capacity, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, can you give us an update on the school zone cameras? Are they coming?
A press release is coming out next week. I can't really say anything about it, but yeah.
Great. We are way behind. We are way behind other jurisdictions, and that's kind of embarrassing.
I know it's been really, really nuanced, unfortunately, with the beacons, and our procurement just took a long time, but we're on target for this school year. So yeah, and then I think we'll see a quick expansion too, which will be good.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks everybody. I'm so sorry I have to leave, but it's been really nice chatting. And if there's anything we didn't cover, you can email me or Laura or Anna, and we're happy to talk.
Thank you so very much. Really great.
Great. Have a great night.
Bye.
All right, and next up we have the Arlington Community Energy Plan with Demetra McBride, the Environmental Management Bureau Chief, DES.
Okay, hold on. I'm just trying to share my screen here. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. All right. And it's just, sorry, real quick, a couple of questions. Oh, first is the Office of Sustainability and Environmental Management. And can you give me just a notion of what my timing is here? What time do I have so I know how quickly or to take questions during the presentation and not wait till later? So what is your time schedule? Let me know.
I think, well, we built in half an hour, and we're running a little bit late, but we built in some extra time at the end. So, um, I'd say half an hour max.
Oh, that's no problem, no problem. And
Okay.
I'm going to refer to some other plans here, including the Carbon Neutral Transportation Master Plan. I do have decks for that. I am going to be at Cynthia. I'll be sending you a copy of this deck. I'll send you one of the briefing deck for the board and the county manager from the CNTMP. And again, if there are any questions anyone has afterwards, please feel free to reach out afterwards and ask me. I'm going to try and make this brisk, and I want you to feel comfortable to interrupt me in between and not necessarily wait until after, because the CEP is just one, the community energy plan is just one plan. And quite frankly, I inherited it from my predecessors. It's a very overarching, very heavy on kind of big policy document. So the real implementation of how we get to our goals in any sector in energy or climate is really in what we developed afterwards, starting in 2021, which is the CEP roadmap. And at the end of this, there are a couple of QR codes and links that you can go to see the first 2 years of that for 22 and 23. And it'll just give you a sense of what we mean when it's kind of like, okay, this is basically where you kind of want to wind up, but this is the real navigation document on how you exactly get there. So very quickly, this is just a.
Could you put it in presentation mode? It's kind of small on our screen.
Oh, is it? Okay, so just bear with me here, just one moment. Is it in view that I have to go to?
Go up at the top, you see your two circular arrows there. Go to the right, the next thing to your right.
This one.
Right there. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Thank you. I should know that by now, shouldn't I? Okay, that's much better. Thank you. This is really just a timeline, and it hits very, very high points, not all of the points. And it really starts with 2000 when the county did its first countywide greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and that was conducted. And that led to the formation of the Arlington Initiative to Rethink Energy, AIR, which is part of my bureau. And then going into Arlington, the art fleet started its first conversion in 2008 from diesel to compressed natural gas. And several years later completed that full transition. At the time, that was absolutely groundbreaking and precedent making. We also conducted recently and completed an art bus zero emissions bus ZEB feasibility study that was really looking at different modes of charging and fueling buses to transition away from CNG, compressed natural gas. The county really started developing its first community energy plan in 2010. It completed that in 2013. It updated that in 2019. But coming more, forward here, we started piloting our first two battery electric vehicles that were incorporated into the county fleet just in 2017. And right now, at present, in our sedan and passenger vehicle fleet, which is the largest section of the fleet, we have over 50% of that is now electric. And by the end of this fiscal year, it's probably going to be slightly over 60%. We're also looking at medium and heavy duty vehicles. We've already ordered electric buses to start piloting those for the ART bus fleet. And we also worked with APS in 2023 last year to order the first 3 electric school buses. So just briefly, looking at a really, really high level, because I want to give you opportunity to ask questions, hoping that you have them, is that it's a multidisciplinary approach and taking very, very different strategies and grouping them in order to really transform this transportation sector. Buildings and transportation make up the greatest part and overwhelmingly of our greenhouse gas inventory. The last formal full inventory of the county was conducted for 2016. Typically, it would have been updated in 2019. We do it every 3 to 4 years through the COG, the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, actually conducts them for all of its member governments, but obviously COVID came and just stopped everything. And if you looked at those years, 20, 21, 22, these were really kind of distorted years if you're talking about a greenhouse gas inventory, because everybody was staying and working from home and nobody was traveling anywhere. So you've got these 2 sectors that collectively make up over 75% of your greenhouse gas emissions, and they were completely skewed during a global pandemic. So we've just started a very detailed and kind of forward thinking in a couple of different ways, updated inventory for 2023. But these strategies really fall within strategic and master planning, programmatic, what you do with your programs, policies, and projects. So really quickly, the overarching master plans for transportation are presently the Master Transportation Plan and the Community Energy Plan, which has a whole transportation sector section. Those have kind of rolled up into them or down from them, however, which way you prefer to look at it, real implementation frameworks. So one of them is the Carbon Neutral Transportation Master Plan. You will be seeing that shortly. We've completed it. The only reason that it isn't out, because we have briefed it with county manager and the board, is that I personally, I have an allergy to just plans. If it doesn't have implementation, if it isn't measurable, if it isn't accountable, it's not a plan. So accompanying this is the 5-year action program. And we're just getting ready to brief the board on that. And once that's done, I anticipate that we will probably be releasing both of these documents sometime in September. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have the ART bus, zero emissions bus feasibility study. And then, of course, there's the Transit Strategic Plan, which was recently recognized and adopted by the board. And that, in the interest of time, is really a strategic plan over the next decade to increase ridership and really turn people, get them out of single occupancy vehicle trips and more into public transit and micromobility. Just really briefly, these are the 3 main buckets of approaches. These are our objectives and our overarching goals in the CNTMP. And underneath these, roll down a number of initiatives and then a number of actions. Those actions, once they're approved and blessed by the board, are also going to be migrated into our CEP roadmap, that implementation blueprint that I mentioned earlier. So what about programmatic? Programmatic is, as I've alluded to earlier, this decarbonization of the fleets, light, medium, and heavy duty vehicles, pursuit vehicles, mainly your sheriff's and your police department. The EVSE is really your charging infrastructure, and really doing a network of that. Not only that, but we're getting ready to pilot a charge at home EVSE pilot with the police department. It's really well suited for this type of pilot and well suited for this type of program. The one thing it's really important to understand is that electrification of transportation is a really exceptionally energy intensive action and an initiative. It really uses geometrically far more energy to electrify transportation than it does to electrify buildings. So it is not unusual. And we have had, for example, we wanted to install public access, public use charging infrastructure, just 6 chargers in the open parking lot at the main county building. And after almost 2 years of really going back and forth with the energy, the electricity utility, they finally came back to us and said, the grid has no capacity there. It's insufficient to handle those 6 chargers. If you want to pay us $500,000 for an additional transformer, we're more than happy to accommodate you. And this is what, we hear over and over again. We also hear it secondhand from developers who, under our Green Building Incentive Program, are really looking at the measures that they can utilize to get more bonus density grants in return for voluntary green building design and construction. And one main element of that is to put in a certain threshold of EV chargers and to make an additional threshold EV charging ready. And time after time, they come back to us and say, look, we're trying to do what you want us to do, but we're not really inclined to pay for Dominion Energy's infrastructure and our load letter. Basically, it's what you send out to say, this is what we need. And it's constantly getting rejected, or not, I shouldn't say constantly, but it's not unusual for it to get rejected. Those load letters submitted by developers to Dominion, again, because the grid capacity is simply insufficient. And this is something that is not unique to Arlington. It is the scenario, not just all over the country, but also in Europe. So really, I bring it up because the challenge, particularly in Virginia, in a very short time period, having to ramp up, I'm not vilifying the power utility, Dominion, because they're dealing with the just kind of almost immeasurable demand on the grid from data centers. At the same time, artificial intelligence is coming on board and is extremely energy intensive. And then, of course, this electrification of transportation. And it's just like the perfect storm. Those 3 coming together is pretty significant, I have to say. And the demand, there's got to be some give. And right now, it's just we're having to look at paying for the construction or the installation of far greater energy infrastructure to handle that demand. Also, so this charge at home allows us, the whole point of me going through all of that was it allows us to disperse the demand. And it's actually, all things considered, a far, far more economical way of approaching it, because if you can put these level 2 chargers at homes, it will be owner occupied. We'll limit it to that. But these owner occupied homes of people employed in the police department, policemen, this allows us to really saturate into a greater penetration of EV vehicles for the police department, and then avoid that kind of crushing cost of just concentrating the grid expansion in one place. And then, of course, there's alternative vehicles, quite conducive to this group, which is electric bikes. And we're doing that for staff, and we've already implemented that. And we're also talking to the police department about which of their staff and which policemen and which, kind of beats, as you call them, could utilize electric bikes rather than cars. And then, of course, in the program, your metrics and your analytics, this is really the value proposition. There are a lot of investments that go into some of these. And if you just take one side of the ledger sheet, which is the investment, it may seem, or certainly the question logically is going to arise, well, what is the community getting out of that investment? So really the metrics and the analytics give you the value proposition, and that's your greenhouse gas emissions reductions, your comparative cost studies, which we have done one, and it is on the AIR website, comparing the cost of having an ICE vehicle, that's internal combustion engine, regular gasoline car, and we did it for that, SUVs, and then small trucks like Ford 150s versus their counterparts in electric vehicles. We're also in the process of completing a key origin destination corridors and supply demand analysis for the charging infrastructure, really the public access, public use infrastructure. And we're looking at our main origin destination corridors. We're looking at the supply that we project, including population increase and how the market is, projected to skew towards greater ownership of electric vehicles and what that demand will be. And then, of course, the most strategic siting for that infrastructure. And then, of course, your performance metrics. For example, charging infrastructure. I don't know how many of you watch Fareed Zakaria on Sundays, GPS on CNN, but I like to watch it, and I was really surprised because he mainly does international issues. And yeah, Sunday at the very end of his presentation, he set aside 10 minutes for electric vehicles. And he was talking a little bit about the charging infrastructure. And at any given time, and this is nationwide, the charging infrastructure that you see out there can be non-operating. It breaks down, and that's not unusual. So at any given time, the range is usually 7 to 20% or 7 to 22% of your charging infrastructure is non-functional. So of course, these performance metrics, and also when we put electric charging infrastructure out there, we are also measuring what the use is. Out of the 24 hours in the day, out of its capacity, what is the intensity of the use and where's the use more prominent? And you get into policies, idling policies, of course, your EV charging infrastructure. We have a rate ordinance that was a pilot that we're in the process of making permanent and updating. We also have the Green Building Incentive Program, which I've mentioned before. It's really interesting because everybody up until this point, anyone who's had one of these types of programs has always looked towards charging infrastructure for cars. And we're in the middle of proposing, I won't call it an update, rather than a complete revisioning of this program for a number of reasons that I won't go into right now. But we're also looking at, wow, why don't we start talking about electric bike storage and charging as part of that and not just looking only towards electric vehicles? And then, of course, there's your projects, and with your capital improvement projects, and none of this is exhaustive. These are, high line, this is a high-end view of what the county is involved in. So, you have travel bike lanes, you have trails expansion and connectivity. You have the BIDs, the business improvement districts, and the major redevelopment plans, such as Playing Langston Boulevard, which of course was designed for complete streets and bike travel lanes, etc. And then, of course, you have your grants, and the federal grants have given us an opportunity. It's very difficult. It's very demanding and time consuming for any of those of you who may be involved in it. You'll know what I'm referring to. But these are some of the primary grants that really overlap with the mission of this particular commission. So we have the EECBG grant, which was awarded. That is a formula grant, so it's not competitive. The award formula was very different from the Obama stimulus, so unfortunately it was more conservative and Arlington got less money. But we wanted to make sure that we were really focusing that money, given what it was, on what we thought was one of the most important outputs. And this e-bike rebate pilot is what we landed on and what we all had unanimous agreement on. So that is going to be launched probably towards the end of the year. We just got the documentation from the Department of Energy, and the board adopted that. We have the EPA Environmental Justice. We have 2 grants, one that we applied for and has already been awarded to us. This G2G and EHE stands for Energy, Health, and Equity Project. The environmental justice grant programs focus, and the benefit of those grants has to occur within census tracts that are recognized and mapped by the federal government as vulnerable communities, socially vulnerable communities, or disadvantaged. So we have that grant. That grant is also going to look at not just buildings, but transportation as well, the EHE. And then we're going to have the Environmental Justice Community Change Grant, which we actually have applied for and we submitted in June. We're waiting to hear from it. We're hoping desperately that we get this grant because it was unusual in that this grant allowed us to do a portfolio. It didn't say, okay, you can only apply for, charging infrastructure, or you can only apply for building upgrades. So what we put together, and this is not exhaustive of the entire grant, but as it pertains to this group, the things that you would be interested in is that it includes a complete recharge that I like to call a reboot of Thomas Street in the Barcroft area as a complete street. Thomas Street, for those of you that are familiar with it, kind of dead ends and it doesn't actually connect to the two main thoroughfares that border the Barcroft community. So this includes two biophilic pathways that would connect to those two major thoroughfares. It would also expand our e-bike rebate project, our pilot, and it would add BC boxes. And this is something I stole from, colleagues in Barcelona. Particularly when you're talking about places like Arlington that are densely developed and have a lot, 71% of our population, I think it is, lives in multifamily buildings, whether they're condos or rentals. And that percentage goes up in disadvantaged communities. So a lot of those apartments are not really suited for storing an electric bike within the apartment or even getting it there. So they have these things called BC boxes, and they're public, and they can be stored. There's secure storage for people in those communities who we hope will be able to now own electric bikes through our grant program. Our voucher program, and then be able to have safe storage. And then we have an EV car share pilot that's part of that grant as well. It's not practical to think that people, really in low to moderate incomes, and maybe even people, in upper middle incomes, it's not reasonable to sit there and think that when they're sitting around the kitchen, the first thing they're talking about buying is an electric vehicle, particularly at the present price point. So we think that an EV car share pilot would be very, very useful. And we don't think that it's restricted only to low to moderate income, the utility of it, but we want to pilot it there and then look at those performance metrics.
Can I ask about the BC boxes?
Yes.
So one issue that is keeping families in North Arlington from buying cargo bikes and e-bikes is there are some single family homes and some multi-family homes that in these residential neighborhoods that don't have driveways.
Yes.
And it's for especially the ones that are on hills, it's cost prohibitive to do anything that it would enable them to get the bike inside their house. But these are not, some of them are not low income people and would be willing to split the cost with the county. They just want to put something to secure their bike where they would be parking their car on the street in places that have tons and tons of street parking. The last time there was a push, they just didn't get very far with staff because there's a limitation. Of course, even if they pay 100% of it, there's a limitation to just leaving something on the street, unless it's a car. So, have you guys thought about that? Because that could be budget neutral.
Yes, and the only reason, again, that we weren't piloting it under this grant program, I don't, right now, I don't have funding to do it. I did put in, it's interesting, Jillian, because I did have a meeting today internally where several of us were talking about the Climate Action Fund and recommendations for that. And I've had an expansion of this pilot, including the BC boxes, kind of on board as an extra, as maybe an allocation as part of that CAF. As you can imagine, there's a lot of proposals that really, I think we had proposals for $2.5 million in the CAF that came up to something like almost $4 million. So there's always more that you want to do than you have funding for. But this was particularly because I was looking at those neighborhoods, and I might want to reach out to you to get some help because I thought that we might have a GIS layer in the county for where those communities were, and we don't. So I really have to rely on other sources to really point them out to me. But I know that we do have neighborhoods with no garages, no driveways. And I'm looking at them from the point of view of both electric bikes and electric cars. And the BC boxes, like you said, they're not astronomically expensive. I think one of the biggest, oddly enough, governments being, what governments are, probably the biggest point of the BC box is the 8 zillion permits and permissions that we'll have to go through to just actually deciding where you're going to place them. And then we can also possibly, I've seen them in individual, that people can have them on their individual properties. For the particular grant that I was just talking about, we're looking at, storage of 8 to 12 in a single BC box. And it has individual lockers for each one. But I think that we can break that down into smaller and possibly individual BC boxes. So I'd like to talk further about that. So the answer is yes, and it just needs funding.
Awesome. And so, I know people that would be willing to pay for it. They just need help with the permit side. But yeah.
I presently have a really, really close friendship with the head of permitting, Sherry R, because I'm helping him apply for a grant as well. So that it's a great idea and he really wants to get it done. So I'll bring that up with him and see what we would have to go through to do that, and hopefully simplify it.
Thank you. Very happy to talk to you more about this, hopefully.
Yeah, would love to. So in terms of projects, I just also want to talk about, in terms of transportation, for those of you who aren't fully familiar with it, the CC2 DCA. And this is that kind of overland walkway or thoroughfare. It is really, again, a very, very unique project. It's the first of its kind that we're aware of on the Atlantic coast. This is really, it's that connectivity of connecting the community to the airport. The interesting and really kind of fascinating thing about this connection, and here, let me say, this is a rendering of it, is this is not just a straight connectivity to the airport. This is for residents, businesses, it's for bicyclists as well. And it's going to be this kind of intersecting hub of the airport, the Virginia Railway Express commuter trail station, a future Amtrak station, and then a multi-use Mount Vernon Trail. So you can see where all of these transportation ways and really kind of micro mobility, alternative mobility, as well as just regular vehicles. So we're really kind of excited, more than kind of, about that project and seeing that forward. And then, of course, Green Streets. And I bring up Green Streets, and I won't belabor the point in the interest of time, but these serve many purposes that a lot of you are aware of, and it comes out of the stormwater department. So we've really looked at it up until now, or I wouldn't say now, but up until around 2 years ago, while we were doing the ramp. This Green Streets was really there for phytoremedial properties and to capture runoff. And to help support our MS4 and reducing phosphorus and nitrogen and sedimentation, act as a control there, and catch that non-point source pollution that's coming off the roads. But something else is happening that I'm sure everybody's noticed lately, which is extreme heat. And I've been doing what I'd like to think were innovative climate programs and projects and strategies for 20 years now. And I started out working with Lawrence Berkeley Laboratories in their international conference on mitigation of, urban heat island and countermeasures to them. They had they host an international conference every 2 years, and I'm going back to 2009. And back then, we were projecting, and I say we in the global sense, that the type of heat that you're seeing now, we would not see until 2050. And it shows no signs of abating or plateauing off. So this is expanding, it's accelerating at a rate that even a decade ago, no one could imagine that worked in the climate space. So there's something about micromobility that really becomes very, very focal when you're talking about strategies for managing people and extreme heat. So look for more discussion into that, and look for a greater utility for green infrastructure, including green streets. And these are the QR codes that I was telling you about. You can look at our Accelerate reports that really give you kind of a magazine. It's an annual magazine of what the county is doing countywide, because we work with every single office, every single bureau, every single division in the county. So it's pretty broad in its capture. And then, of course, there's our GHG and our performance dashboards. So with that, I'm going to welcome any additional questions, and I think we may have some.
Yeah, hey, Demetra, this is Mike Hanna.
Hey, is
back
that
to
the
your
Mike Hanna? Is that the Mike Hanna that I really miss a lot?
I'm just a humble committee member now. I'm not on commissions anymore.
Okay, we have to have coffee, and we'll talk about the email that you sent recently too. So I'm sorry, your question.
Back to your project list. You had that Thomas Road project.
Yeah.
Complete streets, and you're probably aware of the board just approved the land use plan for the Barcroft, including the modifications to the bike element. And I don't think either of those included bike facilities on Thomas Road. So I'm wondering if is there a disconnect there?
No, I think we're going to try and have to get really, really creative for bikes on Thomas, because the main kind of, it's not the only, and I don't see these as barriers. I see them as challenges that we just have to be creative and go over. And it may be that we might only be able to do it manageably on one side of the street, as you know, there's a lot of street curbside parking along that street. And that seems to be, and I can understand for the residents there, they're like, hey, that's where I park my car. I'm not sorry, where do you expect me to do it? So I think that the good news is that there are very large setbacks on those main, kind of connectors and streets through Barcroft. So we're looking to, we definitely want to get bike mobility into that street. And it's just going to be challenging. It's not going to be in the conventional place where you would normally put it. Let's put it that way.
Right. Well, and it's the slope through that site is so challenging.
Yeah.
In general, but Thomas Road is one of the better options. So yeah, I'd like to see that get worked out, because the current plan and the current modification to the bike element that they approved really isn't workable. So yeah, I think some creative solutions would be helpful there.
If we're fortunate enough to be awarded, to get that award on that submission, you can expect that we'll be reaching out to this committee too, because it is going to take some imagination, and it's probably going to take some negotiation, I'm going to imagine. They're not just with, residents, I think probably with the property owner, Jair Lynch, which up until now, I have to say, we did a technical study with NREL with Jair Lynch in 2023. And they were really open and they were really accommodating. And, our department is also, my bureau is also doing a lot of work with them now on stormwater issues, because they've kind of loomed up in Barcroft as well. So I think it's time, and we have enough of a relationship with all the parties to really think creatively there. And like you said, I think there are a lot of challenges in some of the other main streets there, but I thought that Thomas was the one that held the greatest opportunity. And I thought that it would be a pity not to really kind of push us to reach beyond our grasp. And get it might be an unconventional complete street, but it would be sad not to have a complete street there.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Yeah, we look forward to hearing from you. Hopefully you get the grant money.
Looks like Andrew is up next.
Hey, thanks. Yep. So going back to, I guess, the discussion we had a little bit ago before you came to the CC to CA topic.
Yep.
Regarding, I guess, let's say curbside charging. So homeowner doesn't have a driveway but has an EV and wants to charge kind of using their own power. Do you have any policies or ideas that you're working on for how that might be, I guess, legalized if it's not yet? or even just like other, businesses who happen to have street parking in front of their property, like if they wanted to put their own L2 charger out there?
Let me tell you, well, let me answer that really quickly in two parts, because the first one is in your residential neighborhoods. And we do have, and there have been several pilots, and some of them I think one was in Baltimore, where they did a pilot, and it's fairly common, where they allow people to run the current out from their home. And there's a kind of trench cut into the sidewalk, and you have to have obviously an ADA safety feature off of it. And then they can charge at the curb. Those pilots uniformly, we did a literature review, and they uniformly fail after a short period of time, because no jurisdiction can really guarantee exclusivity of the space in front of a home that is in the public right of way is exclusive to the homeowner. And the homeowner, as you can imagine, doesn't want to go through all this cost and permitting and aggravation without reliability of even having the space so they can charge their car. We are looking at some pilots that have been a little bit iffy, but we're exploring them, and they're fairly new. So we're looking for a little bit more record of performance in them for shared charging, or kind of, mini community or block charging. The other thing that I'm looking at is there are emerging technologies that would allow us to have charging off of street lights. And it almost looks like a cuff on the street light itself, and it doesn't require that the street light be separately metered. All of the county-owned streetlights are separately metered, but the Dominion ones are not. So we're looking to see if we can find out just a little bit more and talk to those agencies, whether they be private sector or public sector, that may have been involved in piloting this technology. And then we're looking to do a pilot of our own. So that would be a solution to this no, driveway, no garage kind of conundrum. And then we're also talking to businesses, what businesses are concerned about, and we have to work out the details. And Arlington is always a particular challenge in this area because we're so space constrained. And the business is saying, yeah, but not that many people have electric cars. So we want people to have ease of parking. Ease of parking allows them to kind of like say, oh, I like going to that business because I have easy parking and I can get in there. And they're a little loath to have anything. And obviously you don't want to put EV charging or even, other electrical vehicle charging, micro mobility charging, you might have more latitude with. But when it's a car, you're taking up the space, and it's kind of incumbent upon you to have some kind of penalty if you have a combustion engine, vehicle and you park at that space. So it's a regulatory one, it's a permitting one, and it's also a business, kind of feasibility one. So having that discussion with the business community, it's easier when you have businesses like a Whole Foods or a Giant or a Safeway that have large open parking lots for charging in those lots. On-street parking is a challenge, even with the county, because where the county has right of way, as I'm sure you've noticed, it has meters for charging for parking. Now we can charge for both parking and for electric vehicle charging. But then again, there's that issue of the businesses. So I'm not to say no, that you're never going to see that happen. But again, that takes a real negotiation and probably a compromise. And I don't see it being widespread in the near term. I think it's going to have to grow with the share of the market of people that actually own EVs. In Arlington right now, it's around 3%, between 2.7 and 3%. That's pretty normal. If you've got just average jurisdictions, it's between 1.7 and 2. And if you got really forward-thinking jurisdictions like Berkeley or something like that, it's 4.5%. But it's still a small percentage of the entire vehicle ownership. So it's a different conversation that you're having with business owners if the market share starts to expand.
Wow, comprehensive answer. Thanks for letting me know that you're considering both of those topics.
Thank you so much. And Jillian is next.
Yes, thank you. So I have a big picture question. That sounds like two big picture questions, but they're actually related. So, we've all heard that the decarbonized or the carbon neutral master transportation plan is coming. We're very excited. We've also heard that the master transportation plan is coming. We're also very excited. And to be honest, I don't even know what the difference is and why we're going to set ourselves up with two distinct transportation plans. It sort of seems like we should have a single plan, and I do still serve on a commission, the budget commission, and we are often tasked with balancing priorities. And when you have two plans like this, it makes it extremely difficult to balance priorities. And which leads to the second part of that question. It seems like in your work in the carbon neutral side of the master transportation plan, you guys are you're leaning very far into electrification. Like that's the answer. It seems like you spend a large percentage of your budget on things related to EVs, and you spend a large percentage of your time and staff time on things related to EVs.
Yeah. Can I just clarify that for a moment?
Yeah.
That was the direction I was given. I have absolutely no ability to look elsewhere.
Well, so I thought that that's what the planning process was supposed to guide. And the issue I have is that EV is, while I care deeply about the environment. I make a lot of choices that are not comfortable for me because of the environment. But when I read about EVs, I read that they actually have a huge environmental impact in production. They have a huge human rights impact in production, and they actually have other environmental consequences besides how much carbon they use. Like, for example, going through tires more quickly leaves more rubber dust on the road, which is getting flushed into our wastewater systems and sometimes ending up in our natural streams and whatnot, which is a big, it's a different problem than carbon, but it's also a big problem. Additionally, EVs are heavier. Because they're heavier, they pose a greater safety risk. So all these things I care deeply about. I personally don't see EVs as being a good solution to that. And I see many other solutions out there, including hybrid vehicles. And there's plenty of literature out there explaining how hybrids may be better. So, which goes to the question of when are we going to have this conversation of prioritization and whether we can start spending our time, your time, and our money on things other than EVs.
Jillian, and I'll probably get in trouble for this, but I don't see how that would really change my situation all that much. I think that's a conversation that the community needs to have among itself, but in an open fashion. Right now, all I can tell you really is that I've been directed to electrify. And that was the, not to be a coy or anything, but that was the road that I was given. So and the lane that I was given to travel in. But let me go back and maybe we can talk, directly about that. But let me go back to your first question because it's an important one. The master transportation plan is a plan that is very overarching. It looks at transportation-oriented development. It looks at how you have safety, the Vision Zero. All of these things are rolled up at master transportation that are really, really, really absolutely of paramount importance. Then running on a parallel track, comes my side of things where we're looking at really kind of decarbonizing transportation, particularly since it, cars out so much, it's almost equally shared with buildings, but it's a very large, I don't know what the 2023 inventory is going to turn up, but I'm going to guess that it's probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 35, percent to 38% of our greenhouse gas inventory, and that's conservative. So I'm looking to decarbonize that. in various different methodologies. So when you see the carbon neutral transportation plan, that kind of those three main buckets, it's kind of like, okay, so how do we help get people out of their vehicles and onto public transportation and micromobility? Then the second big goal is set up about charging infrastructure. Now, if in the future it goes beyond electric vehicle and it goes into other modes, you're still going to have fueling infrastructure there too. So it's kind of like, okay, so where is your greatest congestion? Where's your greatest circulation? And where would you cite that? And how do you enter into what does government do and government pay for to lead by example? And then at one point, do you really focus a lot of your efforts on, public-private partnerships to take care of the rest of it? And then the third one is decarbonization of the fleet, and that goes through a lot of strategies, including this pilot of charging at home that we're piloting with the police department. So it's not to say, ideally, there are two slightly different overarching missions of these two plans, but they run in parallel and they cross-cut with each other, and they certainly don't conflict with each other. So we find ourselves working, really for the past, I would say 4 to 5 years, very, very closely with transportation on almost a daily basis, as well as with ACCS. So, I worked with transportation when I was developing the grant application for the community change grant. And with the engineering bureau on what it would look like and what the cost would be, the cost projection and everything. So we work very closely with each other. I don't want people to think that these are just planning for planning's sake, or that there's conflicts in there, or that there's territorialism in there, or that there's not real, just kind of synthetic, I know people don't like this word, but organic coordination between the two, because transportation has to be decarbonized, as do buildings.
Thank you. We are running really late,
Oh,
but
God.
I have
I'm so
I have
sorry.
a question, and
Sure, I'll
Eric
try and be
does too.
succinct. Okay.
No, I mean it means it's super interesting, and we're so appreciative of having you here. So I have a comment and a question, but my comment was actually almost the same as Julian. It seems like a lot of focus on electrification, and yet, I mean, when I talk to friends and ask why they don't ride a bike, it's not because they don't want to be athletic or they can't get up the hills. It's because the roads are terrifying, the intersections are terrifying, and they want to stay alive. So I feel like the main, I mean, a much bigger contribution to reducing our carbon footprint, it would be to make the roads safer, not to give people outlets everywhere and electric vehicles. But that's been covered. My question is with regard to metrics in this, particularly in the school system, that we track the greenhouse gases from buses and school vehicles. We do not track the greenhouse gases, the footprint of transportation modes for individuals. I mean, how are the kids getting to school, whether they're biking or walking or being driven much of the time? And I'm just wondering if your office is able to get into that that niche. I mean, that would be so useful to get the data. You can't improve on what you don't even measure oftentimes, and I'm just wondering if that's something you might be able to do.
I never say no to a good idea, and neither does the AIR team. And I would love, because we've been talking in general, and it fits exactly with what you just said, in looking at artificial intelligence and looking at apps for tracking. Apps are used by a lot of jurisdictions. I've seen them all over the United States. I've seen them used in parks and everything. And they strategically gather this real data that you can use to say, okay, now I know what kind of program I can craft for school students. And now I know what kind of program would best be a partnership with parks and trails and everything. That kind of data. So I think that there's enormous utility. And in fact, one of the strategies in the 5-year action program of the, and I hate to make it so long, carbon neutral transportation master plan is specifically exploring funding opportunities, outside funding and alternative funding for, allowing us to really drive those pilots and develop those tools. So I'm glad you brought it up because you read our mind, and I'm glad that it's something that the public is really interested in, particularly this commission. There's a lot more symbiosis, I think, that anybody could have ever expected between what we're doing and what you're doing.
Thank you. And I see that Eric has a hand up. We'll make him the last.
Yes. I just wanted to ask a little bit. I know you said that your focus is on decarbonizing, but is there a part of the energy plan that does focus on getting focus on encouraging active transportation? I know you mentioned about the connection to the airport as one item, but are there other aspects of that would work on encouraging, like you said, getting people out of cars, but not only electric vehicles or micromobility, but just active transportation as well?
The CEP, and again, I apologize if I act like I'm complaining about it, but it's just been kind of this document that says things like, okay, by 2030, we're going to reduce per capita greenhouse gas production through transportation by X number of metric tons. So that's kind of like great, but how do you get there? So the answer is you will not find it in the CEP. You will find it in the CEP roadmap. And before the end of August, we are going to be releasing the 3-year cycle of the roadmap for the next 3 years. So that's 24, 25, and 26. And you will see measures, strategies, and actions specifically towards driving active mobility, micromobility, and alternative mobility.
Thank you.
And you're very fortunate, and I'm not just saying this because she's on the meeting, but to also have Jillian at the head of FAC, because she came to the table with some really, really, really interesting ideas and how to get to your goals in a more direct, more responsive, and more cost-effective and high-performing way. I won't mention them now because time is short, but there were some really great things in there, Jillian, in the recommendation. So thank you. I like high performance and cost effectiveness. They're my favorite, two of my most favorite things in the world.
Thank you so incredibly much. Great discussion. And Elwin, I am so sorry that we are over time.
No, anybody who wants a question, please, you've got my email. I'm going to, Cynthia, send you the decks tonight. So I encourage people to please just reach out to me. I'm a public servant and you're the public. So please, let's collaborate more on this. I got a lot of exciting ideas and inspiration and excitement from this discussion tonight. Thank you.
Really great. I hope that we can talk further.
Love to.
Thank
you
you
so much.
Owen.
Yeah, thanks so much, Demetria. I don't know about you guys, but I really nerd out on decarbonization and green streets and energy efficiency, so I could listen to Demetria talk all night. If it's okay with you, maybe it might be a good idea to postpone the Custis Trail discussion for maybe next month or maybe later. We still need to put together the agenda for next month. I could breeze through the asphalt art discussion right now, but I want to be mindful of everyone's time. And if y'all have any updates you wanted to discuss amongst yourselves, don't want to take your time. It looks like we only have like 15 minutes left in the meeting.
I'd say might as well start, at least.
Well, and I did want to bring up that we often don't have the meeting in September because it falls on Labor Day typically. So I don't know if that's being changed.
Oh, we have
And
so much to cover.
no,
We
I mean,
will
in
have
which case,
it.
well, he said next month, and I want to make sure there was actually a
Yeah,
next month.
there
Okay.
will be a meeting in
A joint
September.
meeting.
There will be a meeting, and it will be a backpack meeting.
Yes,
to
it'll
get
be on the
to
PAC
get-
date. So middle of September. Oh, September 11th.
Oh,
You. Yes, we love having you for September. It works out really well. It includes the legislative discussion.
Okay, I could spend the next few minutes discussing the Esplanade project, and then maybe leave like the last like 5 minutes, like 8:55, for like announcements if you want. That works. Okay, let's see. So I'm not sure if y'all have heard about this. We just started rolling this out amongst the business improvement districts and the community associations, the civic associations, sorry. So it's a new initiative that we're taking out to see like how we can roll this out locally. I'll give you guys a brief overview of the nexus of this, like where this came from, how we put together our own pilot application process, discussions we've had with other communities throughout the U.S., and some things that you may be pretty interested in the safety implications of these kind of facilities. So when I mean asphalt art, I mean you might have seen some of these in DC. This is an example in the Petworth neighborhood in Northwest, where you see like the county, or I'm sorry, the district government is going ahead and installing these quick build projects to make it safer for folks to cross the street, and also to make the crosswalks more aware, daylight these areas to prevent folks from parking in these areas. But if they're already doing these kind of things, why not make it look nice? Why not allow the neighborhoods to go ahead and install some artwork that celebrates their local history and culture. So this came about here in Arlington as a result of us coordinating with Arlington Arts and CPHD and the economic department. Basically, there was a lot of conversations happening in terms of beautifying our streets, making things more visually accessible for not just bike and scooter crawls like this one here, but also for curb extensions that are popping up throughout the county. And here's an example of one that's over by Virginia Square Metro Station. So we started looking at other examples around the country to see what could be learned, what could we apply here locally. So you might have seen these if you travel around the country. San Francisco has done these with their bike and scooter corrals, such as the one in the top left. But then you also see a lot of communities that are embracing these temporary art installations to support things like parklets and streeteries, just in areas that are definitely more walkable and bikeable, to kind of create like a sense of place for a lot of these neighborhoods. So we took a deeper dive to see what other communities are doing. So we looked at DC's program, the city of Charlotte, North Carolina's program, and then we also are a big fan of Baltimore DOT's program. I'm not going to dive too much into detail since we're running short on time, but we did learn a lot of lessons, and from talking to folks around the country, things that to keep in mind of their experiences, such as being mindful of stormwater infrastructure, being mindful of working with local local departments and local agencies such as schools, being mindful of local history and character, and having an idea of expectations for how to get these on the ground, but also to maintain them and make sure that they, are not draining any paint in the storm drains or things like that. And also being mindful about how these could also be used as leverage for safety improvements, particularly close to schools, where you have a lot of kids walking to the classes and teachers and whatnot. So yeah, we from engaging with other communities and from reviewing other applications and guidelines, and also looking at things like the MUTCD, we put together this asphalt art guidelines that is currently on this website that I could share at the end. But here's just at a high level the things that are being looked at. So the initiative is basically spearheaded through the use of sponsors, basically with the idea of having civic associations and bids be like the lead of each project, where they basically serve as the gatekeepers for ensuring how to coordinate with us and DES, and for getting things in terms like location siting and materials that could be used. So you might have seen a lot of these around in Arlington. For example, this one is at the corner of Williamsburg Boulevard and John Marshall Drive. And going back to what I mentioned earlier, like the county's already doing a lot of these quick build projects, which are meant to be temporary until something permanent goes in there eventually. But rather than just having these be blanket spaces with just flex post and striping on the ground, why not give Arlingtonians the ability to paint in these spaces? So yeah, at a high level, this is kind of what the process we're looking at rolling out in, where anyone can reach out to me in DES to get an idea of, hey, I really like this program. I want to see this in my neighborhood. Can you help us? Can you help us find a location? And then once we could find out, maybe there's one that's on the ground currently, one that's about to be rolled out in the next year or so, then we could partner with your local area civic association or your business improvement district. And then once we kind of put together this team of grassroots-led folks, that's when we put together an application together. And then we kind of sift through in terms of proposed materials, the proposed design, how it fits with the neighborhood. Just taking a more granular look in terms of how this would look and ensuring maintenance needs and whatnot. And then we could and then from there, we'll go through the permitting, which will be using existing transportation right-of-way permits that we have established already. So once that process gets rolled out, that's when you kind of get the green light to paint the artwork in the street. So yeah, this is, as of right now, this is the biggest, these are all the locations of the existing curb extensions and micromobility cross we have. Keep in mind that this is a snapshot in time, so there's probably more that have been rolled out since this map was put together. But it just shows like how many of these are out in the county, not just in the Roslyn-Ballston corridor, but they're pretty predominant in almost every civic association in the county. Yeah, this is the biggest part that I think you guys are really interested in. Not only are these projects, improving the aesthetic quality of the streets, not only are they, getting folks out to paint artwork next to schools or parks or community centers or what have you, but they also have pretty big safety implications. And more research is starting to come out in the last few years from projects around the country in terms of, things like people driving cars yielding for people crossing the street. They also have implications in terms of making sure that people are pretty well aware of where pedestrians and cyclists will be expected to come. And now that there's been so much proof of concept over the years that the MUTCD has been incorporating this as part of the recent update. So now it's becoming federally recognized that these are actually beneficial to everyone. Okay, I'm gonna just breeze through these, but I'm sure I could come back to this at a later date to share more data. But yeah, a lot of the data that we've reviewed comes from Baltimore, from the Bloomberg sham Schwartz study that I just showed on the previous page. There's been a lot of positive correlations between folks yielding to bicycles and pedestrians crossing the street. It has implications in terms of changing the speeds that people pass through in these areas. And from an aesthetic point of view, they do have implications for making crossing guards and community residents and especially in areas with schools that principals and teachers can sense, like just perceive that things are changing. Yeah, there's a lot more data. I would love to share it with you guys soon. I don't want to take up too much time. And there's much more technical data that Bloomberg and Sam Schwartz, which is a consulting firm, put together in terms of looking at sites throughout the country, not just in the Mid-Atlantic, but throughout the U.S. But I'll stop there if you guys have any questions. Sorry, I breezed through that really fast.
So how much does it cost to do all this painting? I mean, from what I read and what you said, like you have to come up with, you have to pay the costs yourself if you wanted to do this. Is that a big expense for people, or?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the level of detail of the artwork, and if you want to hire like a professional artist, not just painting some kind of geometric designs, but if you wanted something more intricate, that could probably bounce up the budget. But from looking at other communities, it seems like they're like $5,000 or less. But it very much depends on the materials and like the artist and number of hours and things like that.
Eric.
Well, thank you for sharing. I think it's a really cool program. It can really enhance places. And it looks like it's mainly community driven. I guess one of the questions I would ask, how can our committee and the pedestrian committee as well sort of interact with this? Is there a role for us, or really just for us to support it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Very much this program is more intended for we call them sponsors, basically like civic associations or bids will be the ones who would handle all the paperwork and helping with putting together design, whether it's made in-house or if it's made through like an artist or something. But there's still very much a lot of value that the BAC could provide in terms of helping us get an idea of areas that should be more focused on. We've been hearing a lot of positive feedback from folks so far that schools would be a great resource. Maybe areas close to metro stations or areas that have a lot of high pedestrian and bicyclist crossings. So yeah, this is very open-ended, and for now, this is just a pilot. So the more we learn over the next year or so, the more we could create a better program if this winds up becoming a permanent thing. And I definitely look towards you guys for guidance and inspiration. I live in DC, so I see this all the time, all over the place. But I very much want to hear what your experiences and how you feel like this could benefit Arlington from a bike and ped point of view.
And does DC subsidize the artwork, or people just, or civic associations or neighborhoods or bids, they do it because they benefit somehow?
Yeah, it seems like it's pretty open-ended. They've been doing it for a while, and it seems like a lot of the projects are actually led by community associations, like not just civic associations or neighborhoods, but just like some are led by the high school, some are led by some churches, some are led by merchants associations. It's very open-ended in terms of anybody who wants to paint artwork. But their program isn't just painting artwork on the street. It's also decorating like the old call boxes at the corners and intersections, decorating like providing vinyl wrapping around like utility boxes and things like that. Yeah.
Julian.
Thanks. I think this is great. The one thing Arlington sometimes does is they sometimes put so much process around stuff that it actually excludes people. So I actually haven't listened to this program, but if there's requirements, for example, that there be a formal organization doing the painting, that's going to be hard because a lot of civic associations are not actually technically formal organizations. A lot of them are not 501c3s, which is often a requirement for these sorts of things. Just urge you to think about the process. And I know there's a tendency to want process to, ensure and accountability and all those things. But the more process you have, the less participation you're going to get.
Yeah, that's a very important point. Like, ideally, I would love for this to be open to anybody to apply for. The biggest thing is like maintenance is one thing that keeps coming up. If someone paints something, who's going to maintain it, kind of thing. Especially if it's like getting like damage from the sun or like it starts to fade or something. So that's not, I don't want to say that's not never going to happen in terms of it opening up to more stakeholders, more different groups. But for now, with this pilot, we're just looking at just civic associations and bids. And once we have more proof of concept that this is like something that is working for Arlington, and we want to see more of it in more places, I'm sure we could probably start to like reduce the amount of red tape, like you said, and reduce the amount of process. But yeah, I agree with that.
It is officially civic associations and bids, because you're excluding a lot of people that way. There are areas of Arlington that aren't in a civic association at all. Most of them are multifamily high rises, and even in even the multifamily buildings that are in civic associations, because of the rules about getting information into the thing, it's really hard, and there's very low participation in civic associations outside of single family homeowners. So if you design a bids and civic associations, you're saying businesses and single family homeowners are people who can do this, which I strongly object to.
Yeah, I hear you. We want to make this as open as possible for everyone. But for now, this is just a pilot. So ideally, we're looking at maybe doing like 3 to 5, just to see how this goes. Just so get like someone behind ourselves, get some idea of what the expectations are. And once we get a better idea of how much these things cost and how long it takes for us to review them internally, things like that. It's not just a pilot for the community; it's also a pilot for Arlington government, for us and DES, to get an idea of what the expectations are and how these things could be improved. But yeah, I hear you.
But you could open it up to PTAs. You could open it up. I mean, PTAs are the obvious one that could sponsor it, and you could get kids involved, which is probably who would actually do this. To fund this kind of stuff, and could probably get the schools grants to fund.
Yeah, for sure.
If you designed it just to be homeowners and businesses, like, come on. Hopefully, you can go back and at least loop in PTAs. If not, like I would just make it like 5. I mean, if you have to have high gating criteria, 501c3s, civic associations, PTAs, and bids. At least you've opened it up to more than just homeowners.
Yeah, for sure. I could definitely start to take a look into this. Hopefully, this winds up leading to a more permanent program, something that's open to everybody. But for now, this is kind of just a pilot. But yeah, I definitely take what you said seriously, and I want to add that down in my notes, because this is just a pilot. And it's always evolving. It can always be better.
Well, thank you so much. Very exciting. It's 9:04. Do folks have announcements or pressing business, anything to say before we conclude? And I will just mention that Owen and I on Friday, we met with County Manager Schwartz, and I can fill you all in on that conversation at some point, but two requests from him. One, that we become very involved in the MTP process in the coming weeks and months, which of course we will. And two, that in the next couple of months, he would like a list from us of our top priorities as a committee, what we'd like to get done, what we'd like to be working on. And then if we give him such a list, he will come to the BAC and discuss those issues with us. So those were a couple of concrete takeaways. And if that's it, we're already at 9:06 and we should let everyone go. Thank you so much. Great discussions. Great to see you all, and have a really good night.
Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia, and all.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank
Good
you.
meeting.
Bye.
And Owen, if you could send me the